Hi everybody, Fett here at Azalea Studios in Nashville. Also serves as a test facility for a lot of gear out there. We've got another video gear review today, and today we're looking at the HearBus system from Hear Technologies. It's a personal monitor mixer system that allows everybody either on the stage or in the studio to customize their mix any way they want to. We're looking at the HearBus 4-pack system today, which is actually set up for 4 users, but there are other configurations available out there, and you can also buy the pieces individually. Comes in a nice box. The 4-pack does everything all in one box, and this is what comes with it. First of all, most importantly, everybody who uses the system gets one of these. This is the actual personal monitor mixer here, and it's got a bunch of controls on it that we'll talk about in a little bit here. But one of the things I really like about these as I took them out of the box was that they're super lightweight. They're made of really strong molded plastic, and as a result they're very rugged, but they don't weigh anything, so they won't weigh you down if you're taking this whole system to your gig. In addition to all the controls on the front, we can have up to 2 sets of headphones connected to each one of these, as well as an auxiliary in. That's for things like a More Me system if you happen to use one of those, or maybe the click track for the drummer if the drummer's the only person listening to click, and so forth. And on the back we've got 2 connections. First of all, we've got this little mount right here, so you can mount the system onto a mic stand and use it that way. In fact, we've got one hooked up here. This is on a boom stand, so you kind of get an idea how the thing screws into the mount there. And then the next most important thing is a connector here that connects the cabling that ties the system together. And that cabling, one of the things I like the absolute most about this system, is Cat 5e cable. This is the same standard cable that's used for Ethernet networks, although that's not the protocol that the system uses. But it uses the standard off-the-shelf Cat 5e cable with the typical RJ45 connector on it, which means it's very lightweight, goes very far distances without any kind of signal loss, and costs a lot less than equivalent audio cable if you were going to have to do this yourself with audio as opposed to Cat 5 cable. So each station comes with its own 50-foot Cat 5e cable that plugs into the next part of the system we'll talk about in a second. But this to me is one of the most ingenious design aspects of the system, that they decided to go with Cat 5 cable as a thing to carry both power and digital audio through the system. Really great design and a really good consideration about cost. So what they all hook up to is this thing right here. This is the HearBus hub. This is the brains of the system. That's the front of it. We'll talk a little more detail about that in a moment. And here's the back where all the connections are. So each of those Cat 5e cables connects up to 8 stations. And you can have 8 stations controlled by one hub. Now there are 3 types of signals that come into the hub. The first is audio, typical analog audio, and that is on a DB25 connector, similar use to the DA88 style protocol. That's 8 channels of balanced analog audio that plugs into the back of the HearBus. That comes out of your console or your recording interface, whatever you happen to be using, to send the signal out to the system of all the channels you're using. The second connection, which we're going to be using today here in the studio, is the digital connection ADAT. The ADAT protocol, which is 8 channels of digital audio, so that's how we're going to be hooking up our system today. But the third one is actually a connector for the HearBus protocol itself. So if 8 stations aren't enough, you can now daisy chain multiple hubs together, and each of those can have up to 8 stations, 8 mixer stations, and you can basically have unlimited size. So if you have a really complicated setup on stage or in your studio, you can really expand this system very considerably by simply daisy chaining those hubs together with standard Cat 5e cable, which is fantastic. So that's the overview of the system. That's basically what comes with it. We're going to get into a little bit more detail, and so let's get right to it and put this puppy through its paces. Well, let's get a little deeper into the hub here after having read the manual quickly, which by the way is an excellent manual and has some really good detailed diagrams about different ways to hook up the system in both a studio and a live environment. Definitely worth a look-see. We're not going to go through absolutely every detail and feature today, because you can certainly get that information by downloading the manual off the internet, but we will show you the basics of how the system hooks up, and we're going to run it through its paces and try it in a real-world session. So this is the back of the hub that we're looking at right now, and here over on this side is, of course, your standard 3-prong electrical cable. So that's our first hookup there. That goes into your AC outlet. Moving over from there, we've got not only our input connectors, but also our output connectors. Let's go over to this side here for the first of the inputs. This is where we hook up the analog input that we mentioned before. That's on the DB25 cable, which is this guy right here. By the way, this cable comes with the system, so that's a nice little money saver there to not have to buy cabling to do this. So that's 8 channels of balanced analog input. That's all it takes to hook it up. And the other end of the connectors rather, can come out of wherever you want them to. There's your balanced connectors, 1/4 inch, come out of your recording interface, your console, whatever the case happens to be. So that's how you hook up the analog inputs. Over here, back over towards the power supply again, is the ADAT input. Now this is standard ADAT connector. These things have been around for years. These little light pipe, they're also referred to. They have a TOS-link connector, which is fiber optic basically, with a connector on the end of it. So the way we hook that up, this is 8 channels of digital audio now, is we just snap it in. Now we've got the ADAT connection. Again, that can come out of your audio interface, any kind of a digital audio console that goes to the other end. So now we've got those 2 inputs, and if we were going to daisy chain hubs together, as I mentioned before, we would use the Cat5e, standard Cat5e cable here to connect one to the other. But the other connection that's most important here is the output, of course, because that's how we're going to hear everything in all the individual mixing stations. So what we do is we take the 50-foot Cat5 cable that comes with each one of the mixers, and we plug each one in to the standard RJ45 connector in the back for as many as we want. So we'll hook up one for each player today in the band, and each one of those will go to a separate station. It's as simple as that. Really, really easy hookup. Now we're looking at the front of the HearBus hub. Very, very simple layout. Over here we've got the power switch, which of course turns everything on and off. We've also got a signal here that shows us whether we've actually got clock or not, digital clock. This is the switch here where we select the input to the system. So we've got ADAT, analog as we hooked up in the back, and also the HearBus if we happen to be daisy chaining. And it's that simple. You just literally flip the switch and it switches between sources and lets you know if you've actually got digital clock source or not. And of course in the analog case there is no digital clock, but it lights green to let you know you're okay in the analog world. So we're going to be going ADAT today, so we simply flip the switch over there. Now as the system is running, each of the channels that you've got coming in actually show their own LED and show you what kind of levels you're getting, and also shows you if there's clip or not. So that's really handy to be able to A, find out if you've got any signal at all, and B, find out if the signal's too hot. And that's the whole thing. That's the front end of the hub. Very, very simple. I love the fact that you can actually have all 3 inputs connected in the back simultaneously and not have to disconnect any of them, but you simply use this switch right here to select which one you want. So you leave your ADAT cables, your analog cables, and your HearBus cables, the Cat5e cables, hooked up at all times. You don't have to go back there and constantly change plugs or anything like that. So that's a really convenient design feature that I really like.